Hi, welcome to the Team Pact Elected Officials podcast. Today we have on our next guest, Blaise Timmons.
Blaise Timmons has attended 2 4-day classes in the past, and this year he attended another one where he won governor at his Oregon state class. This upcoming year, he is going to be staffing with Team Pact. Please help me welcome Blaise Timmons.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on today, Blaise. We really appreciate you taking out your time. The theme of this episode and really why we wanted to have an elected governor on is to talk about and really be a really good example of how we can have influence, not just as staffers, not as interns, not as office employees, but also as students. I think it's really important to highlight that because not only do we have to be staffers to have influence in Team Pact, but we can also have influence outside, both as a staffer or a student. And you kind of have a lot of experience as a student, especially this year in winning your elected governorship at the Oregon state class. So kind of just to start off this episode, could you tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your background and how you got started into Team Pact?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Blaise, obviously, from Oregon, and I've done Team Pact I've gone to 3 state classes, and I haven't won an election until this last year. And so that was really exciting for me. I was super stoked about that, to get that opportunity. And I think, I hadn't obviously won, but I ran each year, and each time I did that, I just learned something new. And I had to learn, okay, it's like you got to actually connect with people and be nice. Like nobody's going to vote for you if you just go the whole time. Like first year, I was ran for something and I didn't talk to anybody. Like,
Yeah.
and I think I was so afraid and so shy. I was 13. And so that was a lot of fun though. That gave me the opportunity to build a lot of courage. Even though I didn't win, didn't necessarily accomplish quote unquote anything, I still got something out of it and I still had the opportunity to learn and grow.
Yeah.
And then next year I ran for governor against my brother, which is so fun running against your sibling but so crushing when they win. Because he got to ride 45 minutes home with him in a car. But it was really cool. I got to see my brother win and give a speech, and I was like, oh gosh, I'm so thankful he's doing that and not me.
Yeah.
Nobody told me you have to do a speech at the end of it. And I guess coming in this last year, it's my 3rd year in Team Pact. I'm like, man, all my friends are staffing. I really want to be a staffer. This isn't what I want to be doing. Going to a 3rd year, this is not necessary. And just felt really convicted. And I was like, you know what, actually, what can I learn this year? If, the first year I went, I learned how to be a little more confident, a little more bold. And then the second year I go and I learned a lot of humility
Yeah.
from losing that race and having it competitive. And I learned how to connect with people. And this year, a couple years have passed. What can I learn? There's still something for me to pull out of this. And to just going in with that mindset and saying, you know what, I didn't want to go in and run for governor because I was like, I've already done that. I know I won't win. So I just did it anyways. Because I was like, shoot, you gotta try at least, right?
Yeah.
And so yeah, it was just I had a lot of fun with it. This is the first year where it didn't feel like high stakes, oh, I got to win, something relies on winning. It was just no, go in, have fun, whatever I can learn out of it will be enough for me. I'll be super happy with it. I've done Team Pact. I know how, what the education they're going to teach you. I could quote the little play they do, word for word, but still learning something new was just so thrilling. And being able to just actually be able to connect with people. I think that's one of the most unique opportunities you get is the influence you get as a leader, especially as an elected official. Your vote goes a long way.
Yeah.
And it's fun to agree with your candidate. You vote for someone, and so when they're voting away on a bill, you want to agree with them because you put your vote towards them. And so realizing that you carry that power and that influence is okay, I can actually encourage people to think for themselves, and I can encourage people to to get up and speak on something, um, just because they believed that I could do what I wanted to do, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's something I really do like about being a student in Team Pact is like you get to be encouraged and encourage other students.
Yeah. That's awesome. So one of the things I wanted to touch on that you mentioned is connecting with people. And I think, I brought it up a little bit earlier, but even to touch on it more, I think there's this misconception often in Team Pact that you need to be a staffer to even have influence, or you need to be a staffer to start being an example to others. And one of the things that in having conversations with other people that they've said about you is that you are a really good example of someone who didn't need a title to be a good example to others. So could you speak a little bit to how, not only specifically in Team Pact, but more in life, that we can be an example and a light of Christ, no matter our circumstance, no matter the title we have, no matter where we are in life, but in every situation, how we can be a light and example to Christ?
That's a great question. Um, yeah, I think for me, I work as a barista at a local coffee like stand kiosk, and so I see a lot of people each day. And the people that I get to see every day, our regulars, is just trying to memorize their names and like one thing that they're doing. And as far as connecting with people, if you know someone's name and you can look them in their eyes and repeat it back to them after a conversation, um, that actually like affects somebody. That has like such a deep caring effect. You know, like
Yeah.
it's the difference between when you go up to someone, you're like, "Hey, bro," because you can't remember their name. It's like super awkward, and you're both like trying not to say the other person's name, and then the other
Mm,
person breaks the ice, and they're like, "I don't remember your name," and then it's like, fine, right? But if you're intentional about saying, you know what, okay, what's your name? I forgot. Remind me. And okay, nice to meet you, George. Like, George, I remember you have a dog. Does she want a dog biscuit? You know, like something like that.
yeah.
That like speaks volumes to people because if someone comes to you with a hard issue, and it's crazy at a coffee shop, people bring like the craziest things, and I'm like, whoa. Um, or they want to talk like counter talk politics, you know, or they want to like reach something. It's like I could debate, I could talk to this person on issues, or I could just see, okay, what's their experience. So just being the first person to listen, and hear how someone's day is going, honestly, is like the best way I have found you can connect with people. And that then they have a willingness, all of a sudden they have such a willingness to like listen to what you might have to say, whether it be
Mm-hmm.
good or bad, and whether what they had to say is good or bad. It doesn't matter. It's just you're connecting with this person.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so good. I think it's so cool how, as Christians, we can use our time and our interactions and surrender that to God to make an influence for the kingdom. I think that's so cool. Kind of looking back to your time when you decided to run earlier this year. So it was your third time at Team Pact. You kind of got the layout. Team Pact, you know what was going on. You had done the alumni track. And you were just kind of deciding to run since you thought that you'd be a good opportunity to run this year. Going into that election, after obviously you made it through primaries, you went through all of that. Was there anything specifically that you thought of beforehand as like a strategy to win at your state class, or were you just kind of going off of the cuff with it?
Oh, um, you know that quote where it's like, isn't it Iron Man? He's like, "What's your plan of attack?" He's like, "Attack." No, it's like, "What's your plan?" Is to win. Win. No, but I think for me, strategy wise, is I was just like, oh, if I can connect with one person at a time, um, that's all it's got to take. It is what it takes is it. It feels weird talking about this, but kind of looking at it from like a vote standpoint, if your friend is sitting next to you and saying, "Oh, I had a really good conversation with that person. I had a really good interaction with that person," you're more likely to vote for them because you trust your friend, right? And so it's like, shoot, have fun with it. Be who I am. I'm not gonna try to win people's votes. I'm not just gonna go up to someone and present to them as just I'm a governor candidate trying to get your vote, but I'm gonna go. And when I talk with people, I'm not even like gonna try to mention that because I want to actually know this person. I guess that was my strategy, is just to like just to get to know as many people as possible. Um, And since I do work at a coffee shop and that gives me high, like, I feel like high energy, um, I was just like, I'm going to use my strength, high energy, and just go meet all the people. Um, so I think that was my strategy, and just get people to help me make posters and stuff and run it. That was my favorite thing, is just asking someone. I would look around and be like, okay, who's good at like drawing or posters? They're great at it. Okay, hey, I'm running for governor. Would you be willing to help make a poster for me? And then go put it up. And just the amount of people who were like, oh yeah, sure, I'll help with that, was so helpful. So not taking it all on myself, and playing to, I guess, okay, what are some strengths that God has given me? And then where are some areas that I can ask people for help? Um, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of gathering and appearing, you definitely have a lot of leadership skills. I know how to steward that well. Besides working at the coffee shop, which actually sounds incredible, have you? Yeah, I bet I'm actually a barista as well. I know how much fun it can be. Yeah. So besides that, or in that tradition, have there been like experiences in your life where you've learned lessons about leadership, or have you been put in positions of leadership um, outside of Team Pact or the coffee shop?
Yeah. Um, that's a great question. Let me think on that for a second. Um, Lessons where I've learned from leadership. Um, yeah, I think I've just always had a fear of, which sounds kind of crazy, but I've always had kind of a fear of leading people, because I never really wanted to, but I still don't like do a bad job. Um, right. Um, so not being afraid of leading, but making sure that like you're not taking it all on, and you're not the one calling the shots, but allowing like Christ to lead you. Um, just because I feel like with our family and some of the things we've gone through, we've just like seen leadership not done the best. And so for me, whenever I feel like I'm, maybe want to be put in a position of leadership, or go serve at church, or do something like that, I've like served at Awanas um, like once a week, and just those were areas where I really learned. I wasn't the main leader, but I was just one of those helpful leaders, and just being like, you know what, it's about like helping these other kiddos succeed, um, and just learning what works and what doesn't. There's a lot of things you'll try to like lead people, and it just really does not work, and like you don't connect with them, and it's really awkward. And so there's definitely been areas where I've like, you try to start a conversation, and you say, hey, let's like do this thing, or and not this thing, to a little kid, and they're just like, no, adamant that they won't do it, they won't listen to you. And you get an adult over who says the exact same thing, and the kid's like, oh yeah, sure, I want to do that. I don't I think for me, just in those areas, I've had to see how other people handle situations of leadership, and really I respect those, like the church and pastors that we have now. I respect them a lot, because they just, they don't try to take it all on, and they try to just like do what God has set before them each day. And I think that that's the biggest thing is you can do, is just don't try to take everything on. You're not meant to. Um, and I think as soon as I start slipping into taking everything on, that's the moment I know, okay, I've lost control of something. um, and does that answer your question? I feel like it was a little bit different.
Yeah, no, I think that answered my question well.
Yeah. So just something I wanted to touch on, Blaise, with something you said is when you were in church or Awanas, you weren't the main leader. And for those listening out there, something I would just give as encouragement and as advice is oftentimes, and something that I really love about Team Pact that continually brings me back to the ministry, is this idea of they don't want leaders, they want servant leaders. And that's such a big difference, and that's such a big contrast to one another, because a lot of people can be leaders, but not a lot of people are servant leaders. And something that you see often in Team Pact out of their leadership is that they're serving. So for those who are listening to this, who are like, maybe I don't like public speaking, or maybe I don't think I can be the one that everyone looks up to, or the one who's in charge. That doesn't mean you can't be a leader. That doesn't mean you don't have influence. It doesn't mean you don't have impact, because you can have just as much impact. And even in my own experience, whether that's in Team Pact or outside of Team Pact, often the person who's being an example, they may not be the leader, but they're the ones that are having the most influence, because they're shining their light for Christ. They're being an example for Christ. They don't care about what title they have. All they care about is sharing the love of Christ. So Blaise, kind of getting more into this idea of servant leadership. In thinking about, obviously you're going to be staffing this upcoming year with Teen Pact, and thinking about applying to be a staffer, why do you think it's important to be not only a leader but a servant leader?
I think the biggest thing is like that's the real leaders you want to follow, and that's the people I kind of grew up wanting to follow. Not all the time, obviously there's other leaders, but those are the people that influenced my life in like the biggest way. And I think as a staffer, you get such a cool opportunity to serve people and to interact with other staffers in such like a cool building up way. Like there's such a brotherhood there, and a sisterhood, that Teen Pact I feel like really facilitates. Is just like, no, you're doing it together. You're doing it with this group of people. Even something as small as like when my first year at Teen Pact, I noticed there were just these like certain guys, and they would always clear all the tables at the end. They weren't staffers, they were campers, and they would always ask people, hey, can I take your dish? Are you done with that? And they did that for each table, and I was just super inspired. And so now anytime I try to go, I try to just clear all the tables at the end of the meal, because it's like that's what I want someone to see at the end of it. And I think one of my main motivations to be a staffer was I get an opportunity to serve these kids and to bring something that was inspirational for me from the staffers and to present it to them. And so that hopefully one day, or hopefully someone's, not in hopes that it's seen, but hopefully that someone sees that and says, you know what, maybe I can staff, maybe I can help some or show someone to be a leader. I think that's definitely a big motivation for me, is just like, and just how selfless the staffers. I feel like I've always interacted with really selfless staffers. They really do care about their students, and so they're very intentional. And I think that impact on me is the impact that I want to have on other people.
Yeah, that's so true. I think it's so cool how in Team Pact, leadership doesn't have an age or it doesn't have a position or a title. Even inside Team Pact, staffers or non-staffers, you still see people stepping up and leading, and show what it looks like to look like Christ. Also, I think it's cool in Team Pact how their leadership model is run peer-to-peer style. So there'd be staffers there that like are way younger than you, or there's staffers there that you had no clue were like only like 16 or 17. I know in my first day class, I was blown away when I found out like the guy that ran my rendezvous that I looked up to so much was like only like a year older than me, and that like blew my mind away. So kind of looking back to your time running at state class, the kind of the main responsibility of someone who wins the position of governor is giving a speech at the end of the week. I just want to hear your thoughts on how you kind of approach that. Like, what was the thought process going into it? What did you do? What were you thinking while you were giving this speech? Stuff like that.
Yeah, speeches, I love the idea of them, but they're not my strong suit. So going into it, I didn't really prepare any notes. And I sat down to prepare notes like several times. But I had a few notes going in. So I hit some key points, but the main thing I wanted to go in is just like, just use like, okay, I've been elected an official. This is such an honor. Like, is there any like wisdom that I feel like I could share from my personal story to these people to encourage them to do like the exact same thing, or like whatever they wanted in their lives. And so I just approached it with like, everybody's gonna take it differently, but what's a message that everybody can take? And it's like, y'all have leadership. And so I gave part of what I remembered was something that the first, I think it was Holt. He was a program director in 2017. And he just shared like, I'm trying to remember, just the definition of leadership is having influence on people. And so I just got up there. I was like, I'm just going to share with people what I know about leadership and what it looks like. because they've just interacted with these staffers. They just found out that this one staffer is like 16 and the students are like 18, right? And it's crazy. Their minds are blown. Um, and just saying, you know what? We all have a certain amount of influence because we all have or a certain amount of leadership because we all have a certain amount of influence. We all have a certain amount of people who we are influencing, and just kind of keying people into that and just saying, if you see it that way, if you see it as you lead whoever you have influence, um, then just do good work. Just focus on good daily habits. And I wanted to just kind of leave people with something that they could kind of take home. I didn't try to make it the longest thing. Um, I like things that are short, sweet, and to the point. And so just leaving people with something that they could take home and be like, you know what, if I have influence on this like before they make an action, before they go to Awanas, they're like, hey, I have influence on this person. How does that influence how I'm going to act around them?
Yeah, that's really cool. I think something that was really important that you touched on is just relying on the Lord and seeking, even from your own story, what the Lord has taught you. I think one of the most important things, because I've been elected governor as well, and I was very much in your boat when I won, and it was like that panic moment of, oh my goodness, I remember sitting on my bed the night before I had to give that speech, and I was just going, okay, what do I say? What do I say? What do I say? And it just takes a lot of prayer and a lot of just thinking, okay, what does the Lord want me to say, and how can I be just simply a vessel for him? I think that's the most important thing, that in whatever we do, whether that's giving a speech at Team Pact, whether that's going to our churches, whether that's attending our schools, it's just simply being a vessel for wherever the Lord is calling us. So in terms of that, where do you think the Lord's calling you? Obviously, you're staffing with Team Pact this upcoming season, but what do you think that the Lord has for you after that, if anything, that you can think of right now?
Yeah. Well, I always try to stay in prayer and like in the word as much as possible to hear direction from him. I love the Team Pact ministry. I want to say, like, the moment I left my first day class, I was just like transformed not transformed, but I knew what I wanted to do. I was like, I want to be a staffer. Um, I want to always be a man who's in my community,
Yeah.
just leading well. And I think that, like, when the gospel tells us, or the Bible tells us, I don't know if it's in the gospels, but to live like peaceful and quiet lives, I think there's such a beauty in that, in going to your own place where you live. And so for me, I just want to have a home and lead in any community that I find myself in. And I think that, if that's continued with the Team Pact ministry and the Lord has me go do bigger, better things with that, I would love to do that. And if he just calls me to do it simply, then, like, I'd be just as stoked to do that. And so I think that's what I just mainly listen for, is just like, is it like something I need to go out and do, but also realizing that I can always have that opportunity at home. And so, yeah, for the future, I'd love to staff. I'd love to travel staff. I think those would be great. And just continue to learn how to best affect my community back at home, or wherever I call home. Best to encourage people to do the same thing.
Yeah, that's so good. I think that's something we often overlook, is that, like, the community that we're around, they're the people that we have the biggest impact in. TPACT is this large national scale organization, but it's meant to launch leaders out into the world to change lives, to change the world, not to change lives, just to change TPACT. So I think that's so great how you're kind of looking at that through that worldview of, how do I change my community? Kind of looking back to, you mentioned earlier that you had the opportunity to both win as governor, but also you lost to your brother. So was there some sort of, like, if you're someone who has lost and won, what would your advice be to them for accepting the win gracefully, but also in loss, how do they deal with that?
Oh, tears. No, for real though. I Yeah, losing is never fun. I once went like a whole soccer season. I love soccer, and I had the worst team in the world. They were like no shade to them. They were not soccer players. We lost every single game. Um, it was brutal, and that's how it felt losing that election. um, it was like a soccer season that you lose every single game. But um, for me, I was like my pride. I think was the biggest thing damaged in all of that, and so I really had to like check my pride in a lot of that, and just be like, this isn't something that I need to be upset over. Like it's my brother. I love him. I want to see him succeed. But for real, it's like when you lose and you pour out when you know try really hard for something and then it doesn't work out. Um, oh man, I just had to just work on just moving on, I guess, and take the blow to pride and say, you know what, I'm gonna learn from this. Like I still had a great time, win or lose. So going into like my good time isn't made up of did I win or did I lose. It's did I learn something new. And I think having like that as your perspective can be the biggest like deterrent towards like ultimately being destroyed over not winning against your brother, as I was when I was like 14. Um, so yeah, definitely just feel the suck of like, oh man, I lost. Great. Um, and just use it to learn better. And going into winning, really focus on humility. Something I had to do was every time I just felt like there's always that pride of like, yes, this is what I'm doing. At least for me,
Yeah.
there is.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, no, I had to catch that, had to take that before the Lord and just be like, God, I feel his pride. Please, like, if this is something you want, let it be something that um, that I am able to succeed in. Um, so I think that was the biggest thing is that didn't take like huge somber amounts of like hours of just praying. No, it was just like maybe a 5 second prayer of just being like, oh, I feel myself maybe maybe going towards an unhealthy place. I'm just gonna correct that. Um, yeah, and I think that was my biggest help was just like, no, I'm just gonna allow this to be a fun thing and not be destroyed or like if I win or lose, that's not going to be the thing that made Team Pack good.
Yeah.
Um, but that's definitely not an easy thing to do. And I definitely fell victim to that own trap like 100 times. And there have been times where I've just been like, oh my gosh, I deserved that. And it's like, you know,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's great. I think one thing that you mentioned that's super important, especially in Team Pact, is this idea of humility. One of the things that is a distinctive, actually, of Team Pact, is a ministry distinctive, is excellence. And I think excellence is such a good thing to pursue, but oftentimes excellence can turn into pride because we do something good and we don't point the glory back to Christ, we point it back to ourselves. And that's why humility is just so important, because in every situation, whether we win, whether we lose, whatever circumstance we're in, if that glory isn't being pointed back to Christ, then it's really worthless and it's meaningless. So kind of just to wrap up this episode, as a last question to you, what advice can you think of to give someone who is going into their maybe first, maybe second or third 4-day class? What advice would you give someone going into that class?
oh, just find something. If it's someone who's returning for alumni, it's just like find something new that you can learn. Um, there's always something new you can learn. And I'm a person who loves learning. So yeah, go in an attitude with learning and just have as much fun with it as you can and run for something. Um, I ran every single year, but obviously I didn't win every single year. I only won last year and I had as much fun every year. So I'd say that if it's
Yeah.
someone new, they come in and I'm like, yo, run for something and find something that you can learn. Because even if you lose, you'll walk away and say, hey, but I learned this one thing and I'm really smart about it now.
Yeah, that's such good advice. Blaise, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate you coming on, taking the time to talk to us. Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. So, Like to Finish this podcast will be coming out weekly. Stay tuned for next week. All right, see you guys next week.